Good evening. PJ, thank you so much. And Valerie and Holly, thank you so much for having me. I am overwhelmed to have so many beautiful faces out there looking at me tonight. The last time I spoke at Dwing, it was in a home, and I think we might have had 20 or 25 people, and now we've got almost 100. So it is really a pleasure to be here. So thank you so much for coming. Let me ask you, how many of you all are in transition right now? Just a show of hands. Okay. How many of you all have just taken a new position? Wow, okay. How many of you are in a position and you're kind of like, ooh, yuck, I'm not sure I really want to stay in this position? Okay, yeah, who wants to raise their hand to that one, right? Well, you know, the funny thing is we have all been there. Everybody has been there. So you may be feeling right now that the best is behind me, and maybe it's already, life has passed me by, and what I'm going to share with you tonight is that is so not the case. The best is absolutely yet to come. You know, our world right now, you know, getting prepared for tonight, I turned on the news, which is just scary. You know, it's just scary, isn't it really? You know, we have hurricanes, and we have earthquakes, and we have famines, and we have droughts, and we have politics, and we have... And we have Perry, and we have from our state, right? And we have recession, and we have people losing their jobs, and people getting divorced, and people in transition, and people not having jobs for 12 and 18 months. And you've had tremendous careers before that, and you're thinking, what in the world, right? The best is behind me. And what I'm here hopefully to share with you tonight, the best is so not behind you. The best is right now in this present moment and what's going to come. So I wanted to start by just sharing a little bit about my own story because I have so been in your moccasins, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I wanted to share a little bit about that, and then I wanted to share a little bit about what led me to want to form Alignment and where that name came from and what that means to me. And then I wanted to share a little bit about my book because the book is actually a little bit of my journey through this whole alignment process that I personally was going through. So first, PJ told you a little bit about my background. So yes, I was fortunate enough to get hired from Hewlett-Packard right out of school in 1983. So that tells you that I'm 50 this year. Yes, and age is a privilege. For those of you who think, oh gosh, getting old is not good, age is a privilege. There were 2 times in my life that I did not know if I was going to make 50. So age is a privilege. So if you feel like, gosh, I'm getting old, yes, you are. And that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing. So I was lucky. I started out in Hewlett-Packard, and it was a wonderful, utopic experience right out of college. Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, for those of you who have been fortunate enough to have any sort of exposure to them, they were the best CEOs for me to start my career under. Next to my father, they formed me from a character and a value perspective professionally. They were incredible, right? Wonderful 18 years there. I started off in sales. When I left, I was running a $3 billion unit for them. So it was a fabulous experience. Loved every minute of it. Carly Fiorina came on board. I worked under her for 2 years, and she also was wonderful. So nothing disparaging about Carly. Just that the company was going in a direction that I wasn't sure I really wanted to stay. So I left to join Vignette Corporation. Tom Hogan, the CEO of Vignette, hired me to run their distribution channels out of Austin. My first day on the job was 9/11/01. Wow. Right. Is that ominous or what? We're all flying to New York to launch this product. It doesn't matter the name of it. And I got stuck, right? Never really made it to New York. They made it to New York, and they got to take a bus back for 3 days. And that was the beginning of my career at Vignette. Fabulous experience, software company, fast-paced, publicly traded. I was on the executive team, commuted to Austin for 3 years, lived in the Four Seasons. It wasn't a bad gig, but I did commute, right? I got sick when I was at Vignette, bad sick. And I decided to resign from Vignette so that I could get well. Lost the ability to have children in a nutshell. Had a real wake-up call from a life perspective, right? All of a sudden I wasn't going to be a mom. My childhood dreams were shattered. I mean, I was glad I was a career person, but it really wasn't totally all I wanted. I mean, I was raised in Bedford Falls, right? Hot Springs, Arkansas, for those of you who don't know. And which was fabulous, right? Mom and Daddy, I mean, Lane knows them. They're fabulous, married 60 some odd years, wonderful sister Gretchen. You know, I had this vision of, oh, I'm going to have that someday too, right? So when I lost the ability to have kids and I had to do a Control-Alt-Delete, you know, on my live screen, that was when the first wake-up call happened. And I went to work for Noel Tishy. I was sharing with you about Noel Tishy. Worked with Noel Tishy in the New York City Leadership Academy. That was when I first got the taste that, wow, maybe my career was going to take a different spin. It wasn't going to be in technology leadership. And I went to help Mayor Bloomberg and Chancellor Joel Klein reform the school system in New York. 1,200 schools, 1.5 million children, 50% failing, right? Super Bowl of school reform. I've never been in education at all. Another big learning experience. Would I have ever thought that that's where I would land? No, it was just very serendipitous, random that happened through a relationship that I had formed with Noel Tishy back in 1985, right? And we'd maintained that relationship and he called me and it was just divine providence at work. I was there for 3 years. I needed a job that would have health insurance. Bottom line, was not health insurable, $1,200 a month with health insurance on a nonprofit salary, hard to do, right? Hard to do. Who do you think would call me up out of the blue but United Health Group? Right? Who would not give me, I was not insurable with. I was in the high risk pool. So I flew up to Minneapolis, interviewed, was offered a job as a vice president, my third VP job in a publicly traded company, got $59 a month health insurance, right? Commuted to Minneapolis, right? Fabulous experience. Had never been in healthcare, learned that industry, did not care for Minnetonka. That's that little place outside of Minneapolis, for those of you who don't know, where a dusting of snow is 8 inches, right? So, you know, from a Hot Springs, Arkansas, Dallas girl, it's a big wake-up call there. I lasted 18 months in that job. I knew in the first 2 weeks that it was not a good fit for me. I was not aligned to that culture. And I lasted 18 months. I disciplined and powered through like we women do. This is what we do, right? We power through, right? You're all nodding. And I mean, you all are with me on this. And I woke up one morning in the Sofitel Hotel, and I called my parents, and I said, I'm resigning today. And I had no idea what I was going to do. But I had a peace that passed all understanding. And I think you know what I mean. And I got on a plane, and who would be flying the plane? But Mick Robichaux from Hot Springs, Arkansas, whom I had known my whole life. He was the pilot of the plane. So I'm getting on this airplane, and he's standing there at the door, and that was just one more affirmation. These aren't accidents, people. These just aren't accidents, right? So I got on the plane, and I flew home, and I hired an executive coach. I drank my own Kool-Aid, because that's now what I do, to try to figure out what it is that I really wanted to do with my life. I had to get aligned, which is the concept that this company is formed on. And when I talk about aligned, and that word, I love that word, and that was a divine word too. It came to me one night, you know, when you wake up at 3 o'clock and you have those things that float through, and I actually wrote it down, and that's what I named the company. 3 types of alignment to me. The first, and the one that I'm going to really focus on today, because I think we as women can really work on this, is alignment within ourselves. Alignment as an individual. And what I mean by that is, what is it that we really want to do? What do we really love doing? And what are we really good at as a person? Our beliefs, our talents, our skills, our passions, all that stuff, when it's all in the flow and it's in the groove, you all know what I mean. That's when you're aligned. That's when you're totally in your groove, right? That's the secret to us being successful as people and as professionals, is having all of that in alignment. When you're out of alignment, people thought I was a chiropractor. Honestly, I think they still, when they look at alignment, they either think I'm a garage that's going to do wheel alignment or I'm going to align your back. Well, maybe sort of, kind of, but more about mind, body, spirit alignment, having it all be in the flow. And when you're in that groove as a professional, you're on steroids. You're on steroids successful. It's when we try to squeeze into something that isn't quite, the clothes are too small, that we just don't, we're not in our juice. We're not in our mojo. You know what I'm saying? Have y'all ever been there? I was there at United Health Group, big time. Not that they weren't a fabulous company, and not that I wasn't a fabulous employee. I just wasn't a good fit. It just wasn't in alignment. So that's the first piece, is the individual alignment. The second is alignment with the people that you work with and the company that you work for, right? If you've ever worked for a company where it's just a sweatshop, you're not really in agreement with the CEO's philosophy, the value system, the culture, you're out of alignment. Not to say that they're not a phenomenal, on steroids successful company, you're just not in the groove with them, right? The last piece of alignment that I like to think about is the alignment to our market, to our constituents. So, if you're working for a Hewlett-Packard or you're working for a Boys and Girls Club, you want to be in alignment with the people who are going to be buying or needing your goods and services. So, individual, groups of individuals, and then individuals and groups to their market. Those are the big three. Today we're talking about us, individual alignment, okay? My philosophy is this: all the answers are within us. And we've probably been taught that our whole life. If you haven't, newsflash, that's where the answers are. The answers are not in a book. They're not in the latest philosophy on Oprah magazine, although I love Oprah magazine. They are within you. The books and the magazines and the motivational speakers and the pastors on Sunday morning help to uncover and reveal what's already there, that we've shut down because we've listened to whatever the stuff is that we think that we're supposed to be listening to, right? The corporate America speak. The people that are competing with us speak. Just turn on the news, speak, right? But if we uncover what's in here, that's where the answers are. That's the juice. And for some reason, we get really scared when we do that, because sometimes those answers are not what you think you're supposed to be, doing or thinking or saying. When I called Mom and Dad and said I'm leaving, United Health Group, the first thing that came to my mind was my father always said, never leave a job unless you have a job. Right. Right? But I knew that I needed to go. I wasn't going anywhere there. I was miserable. I was in Sofitel Hotel in Minnetonka with 8 feet of snow outside in a culture that did not jive with me. It wasn't working for me. So I had to have that courage, and it was anchored in faith for me, to just jump off the high board and say, you know what? I got to figure this out. Because this VP of publicly traded company, third one, ain't working for me anymore. Not happy anymore, not fulfilled anymore. So that's the first thing, is that the answers are within us. And we have to be brave enough and courageous enough to just go, open the kimono and go, ooh, really? Right? And embrace it. The second thing, and what I wrote my book about, I believe that the incidental meetings and the random encounters that we have in our life help stimulate and give us those aha moments. Incidental meetings are not incidental. Period. There are no accidents. When you get on an elevator, you don't know. That person that you're talking to could be the next person you work for. When you go to the dry cleaner and somebody's checking you out, it could be the next opportunity for you. We don't know. Half the time we're, frankly, on autopilot, right? We're on autopilot. We're not even looking at the person that's in the elevator, and frankly, sometimes we don't want to. I mean, my mother, we were laughing I was home over the past weekend for a book launch in my hometown, and Mother said, well, I've got the title for the next book, and it's going to be, Is This Seat Taken? No, I saved it for you. And that's what Mother read. And I said, oh, Mother, I think it should be, Is the seat taken? Yes. Yes, it is. Please don't sit there. But no, I mean, you just never know. You just never know. So first point is, incidental means are not incidental. And in order to recognize that, we have to stay present in the moment. And 9 times out of 10, because we're on speed as women, we're on to the next thing before we even get past this, right? When you're in these networking events, have you ever talked to somebody and you know that they're looking at somebody else while they're talking to you? How does that make you feel? About that big? Because they're not focused on you. They're thinking, oh, that person just walked in. Bye-bye, and they shoot off to that. And they never know that the person that they're talking to could be, the person that's going to help them the most in their life, right? Staying present in the moment is so hard sometimes. And yet, for me, from my perspective and from my experience, it's all it is. Now is it, kids. We're not even guaranteed the next minute, much less the next year. And the third point is, we're all connected. So for those of us who think that it's just me and me alone, or me and my 3 family members, we are all connected. Every one of us, it's a ripple effect. It's a ripple effect. We're not just about each other. We're about the collective whole. All boats do rise. So those are the 3 points that I try to outline in my book. And I wanted to highlight just a couple of stories that I thought might resonate with global travelers. How many of you all are road warriors? Like on the plane a lot, or subway, we're not subway here, but on the plane a lot. There's a story in my book, I call it 5E, and it's a story about a man who, does that 5E meaning, okay, y'all know what I'm talking about. The seat 5E, right? The warm nut seat, this is the warm nut seat, right? So we're in first class, typically American Airlines. This guy comes on the airplane, and I am sitting there, the last thing I want to do is what? Right? I wanted to just not be smart, act smart, I didn't want to do any of that, right? I wanted to read my People magazine, right? Like it was Barron's Weekly or something, and I didn't want to talk to him. Well, he comes in and he is just so effervescent, just real excited, going to go home to see his 8-year-old little boy get a bicycle or something for his birthday, and wanted to tell me all about it, right? And I'm thinking to myself, oh, here we go, 3.5 hours with this guy next to me in seat 5E. And I just didn't really want to go there, but he wouldn't let go. So for 3.5 hours, he told me that he had just resigned from his company because he had not resonated with the values of the company. And he was having an identity crisis because he thought that his identity was all wrapped up in the company. Have you ever been there? I have. When I went from Hewlett-Packard to Vignette, Hewlett-Packard was a brand name. Vignette, not so much. So I had to explain, who Vignette was. And then when I left technology altogether to go into education, people thought I'd lost my mind. Really? They thought I had lost my mind. It was official. She has gone loco. And the irony of it is this guy was mirroring back emotions that I had felt and that I had heard from so many other people. People would go to a cocktail party and you're talking and you don't really have a company to associate with. So you associate yourself with Kristin Kaufman, right? Is that good enough? Is that identity rich enough, right? It's scary. So this guy was telling me this, and he said to me, but I am so happy that I've done this because I was not in alignment. He didn't use those words. I was not in sync with the values of that company. Big wake-up call for me. First time that anybody had said this to me, bravely. Of course, I was an anonymous soul that he didn't think would ever put it in a book. And I did change his name. I think it's John in the book. I don't remember what his name was in real life. But I can tell you there are a million Johns out there, right? Who have left corporate America or left a big job, right? They feel like their identity was tied up with that company, and oh my gosh, I'm not with them anymore. Now what? So I write about that because it started a whole process for me and how I was identifying with who I was, getting in alignment with who I was. My brand is just fine. Kristin Kaufman is just fine. It doesn't have to be Kristin Kaufman, Vice President of Hewlett-Packard. It doesn't have to be Kristin Kaufman, Vice President of Vignette. Who cares? My brand is just fine. Just me, my DNA, my contributions on the planet, because I'm going to be in alignment with what I really want to do, right? Big distinction. That was one big wake-up call for me. Another one that y'all might resonate with, how many of you all get pedicures? Okay. How many of you all have conversations with your manicurist or your pedicurist? Right? Like expose, right? You know, I mean, really, that's a book that needs to be written, or the hairdresser stories or the pedicure stories. Well, one of the stories in my book is about a pedicurist. And she was an incredible human being. She's not deceased, an incredible human being. Grandmother, raising her daughter's children because her daughter is incarcerated, 6 grandchildren, on a manicurist and a pedicurist salary. Okay? Every time I would go there, this woman would look at me like I was the only human being on the planet. I would never even know that she had any of those problems had I not probed one day. And she used to say, oh, I just wear them like a loose dress. Wonderful metaphor. I just wear my burdens like a loose dress, and they just kind of hang on me, but they don't confine me. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful message. And that story it's very spiritual. She was a very, very faithful woman. And so she did share a little bit of that with me. But the lesson I took away from that was undivided attention. She looked at me like I was the last person that she was going to see on this planet, doing my feet every 3 weeks. You know? Random. And every day we have the opportunity to have those random encounters. So when you're in transition especially, you know, what I would love to suggest is that you stay open to it. Wake up. It's so easy to get on autopilot. I mean, it is. I mean, I remember when I was traveling, and you all that are 50 will also remember this. We didn't have iPhones and Blackberries. So when we traveled, what did we do? We talked to people. We would sit in the terminal room, right, with our newspapers or with our magazines, and we'd say, have you seen this? Did you see this? Now, you can sit in a terminal for 4 hours and never speak to a soul. Have you noticed that? What's up with that? We're so missing out on the human connection because we're all connected, but we're really not connecting flesh to flesh. I don't mean electronically. I'm talking about pressing the palm, eyeball to eyeball, you know, really connecting with people. That's what I'm talking about. So for those of y'all who are in transition or in a new position or, you know, maybe not satisfied with your current job, stay awake. Go on to the elevator and look them in the eye and say hi. Look at the grocery store sacker. Call him by name. I have a story about one of the grocery store sackers, Tom Thumb, where I live, who just, I love him. I mean, I just love this little boy. He's not a little boy anymore. I think I've been going to him now for 15 years. But he is a special needs person, and he touches me every time I go to that store because of the way he is so attentive to wrapping things and putting them. He's very, you know, buttoned up about the way he sacks his groceries. So if you stay awake to those incidental meetings, right? Stay curious. Somebody sits down next to you and you're thinking, oh, be curious. Ask them. I mean, and I know some of you before the meeting said, gosh, I'm an introvert. You know, that's not really easy for me. My sister does it really well, but it's not really in my DNA to do that. You know what? You don't really have to be that extroverted. Oftentimes, if you just say hello and smile or ask a curious question, people will respond. It's kind of amazing that way. You know, it's just a friendly connection. You never know. You never know what's going to happen, right? You never know. And the last point, you know, that I'd like to leave y'all with is personal philosophy. I don't believe in accidents. I just don't. I've said that before. And I believe everybody on this planet is here to teach and is here to learn. That's why we're here. We are here to teach and we are here to learn. And we do that not by standing up in front of a room and talking. We do that by just being who we are. Winking, smiling, greeting people, thanking people, asking a curious question, complimenting them on their pretty scarf. Just little things. Teach others. And we learn from them too. Because the moment that we do that, it opens up this wonderful opportunity for people to respond. You know, I made reference to Bedford Falls and Mayberry because that is where I come from. And somebody said over the weekend, you know, all that's gone. We don't have Mayberry anymore, and we don't have Bedford Falls anymore. We don't have that pace anymore. We don't have that familiarity anymore. We don't have that neighborhood feel anymore. And I'm pushing back on that because we can have that. And we do have that because that is us. That isn't a zip code or a little street with a one traffic light. That Mayberry and Bedford Falls that's us, y'all. And if we had that community and that being present in the moment and that not taking incidental meetings as incidental meetings, and we reach out to one another, we can create that anywhere. In the terminals at DFW, in Nairobi, in Thailand, at EDS, at Hewlett-Packard, at Frito-Lay, at Dell, at ACS, we can create that, especially women, because we're the leaders. Sorry, Kurt, but we're the ones that can actually create that energy if we choose to do that. So that was the reason why I wrote the book. The process of alignment for me, yes, the answers are within each of us. For me, so many of the people that I met through all the course of my adult life helped stimulate ideas, helped make me aware of things that were within myself that I know I would not have been aware of had I not met those people. And these were not the fancy people. This wasn't the George W. Bush or the Condoleezza Rice that I met. These were the grocery store sackers and the manicurist and the men on the plane that I never would see again ever in my life. That's who I'm talking about. And so we all have that. We all have that. So that's my charge for those of us who are in transition or taking on a new responsibility, a new challenge. Be open to it. Just be open, be awake, be inviting, be curious, stay curious, and realize that, you know, we can learn and we can teach from every person, right? And that's our charge. So that was my message for today. And I know that many of you are perhaps wondering, you know, is this it? And, you know, is my life over? I've been unemployed for 2 years. And I'm here to say to you, no, it is not. It is not. And just be open to these random encounters because you never know where the next big opportunity is going to come from. So that was my message today, and I want to thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to open it up for Q&A. If you want to ask me some vulnerable question, I'll be as vulnerable as I can be. So, yes.
Actually, I would like to give you an example of what you just described.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you.
I was the first time I was in transition. Been there a couple of times, but this time I was in this the weekend that I was no makeup. No, I have to talk in this. It's not on. It is? Okay. Anyway, I was in sweats, no makeup. You know, not a pretty sight. So the man standing next to me at the deli counter was ordering pounds of deli meat. So I looked at him and I said, well, just how many? And he said, I don't. I come home every day for lunch, but I don't eat the bread. So this is for me. So I said, oh, what do you do? We had a half-hour conversation at the deli meat counter. I gave him my business card and sent him my resume, and he sent it to 3 or 4 people he knew. It was just one example of, doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter where you are, who would have ever, he didn't know me from Adam. I certainly didn't look professional. And I'm trying to tell him I really am a VP of HR. And, so it is just one example. And I have tons of those examples as well, but that was just one that came to mind that I wanted to share because it's right on to what you're talking about. Sure.
Did you all hear the question? The question was, what caused me basically to write the book? What was the impetus that took all of these experiences that I'm talking about and put them in a little yellow bow in a book? So to answer your question, I have written since I was a little girl. I was one of those that kept a diary, right? And when I would travel, I kept journals. So I have reams and reams of journals at home. When I traveled, with Hewlett-Packard, all around the world, everywhere from Bentonville to Nairobi and back again, oftentimes the person that I was most happy to see was the taxi driver or the limo with my name on the card. Have y'all ever been there? You arrive at Frankfurt Airport and it's 2 o'clock in the morning because your flight was late and there's a man standing there with your name on a placard and you're like, thank you, Lord, he's here. And I started keeping a journal of these incidental people because they were absolutely angels among us. And they were everybody from the taxi driver to the bartender at the Admirals Club in New York City, who is in the book, to, name a person, right? And so that was what I did. I kept those journals. And I'd always wanted to write a book. And frankly, the book I was originally starting to write was not this book. I was starting something else. And I wasn't passionate about it. I wasn't aligned. So I stood up to the publisher and I said, you know what? The book I really want to write is this book about all these incidental people, these anonymous people. I don't even know the last names of most of these people, right? But the tremendous effect that they had on my life. A tremendous effect they had on my life. So I pulled from my journal, and there are 25 stories, ranging everywhere from a little girl that I taught swimming lessons to the bartender at the Admirals Club in New York City, and if y'all are frequent, you will know this bartender, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. To the taxi drivers in New York City, people that I met in London in a canteen one night, a family that I met, an older couple in Big Sur one night when I was alone on Valentine's Day night. And they reached out to me with open heart and open arms and created a magical evening for me. And so I tried to collect these stories. And from the stories, then I wanted to weave what the wisdom was and what the lessons were that those anonymous angels, so to speak, taught me in my life, and really give them a name. Give those people a name. And so that's what the book is. And that's how it came to be. And it is the first of many. And I haven't decided if it will be, is the seat taken? Yes. Or is the seat taken? No, I've saved it for you, but there will be another one. So, yes.
I really like the message that you gave. I was in a car wreck and almost didn't live. And my message to everyone.
Could you all hear that? She said, Lenona has said that she was in a car wreck and she had the same experience where it was almost like a renewed appreciation for the here and now and to be awake, and that the most amazing things can happen if we're just awake. And frankly, we get so busy that we get on our hamster wheel, right? We're on our hamster wheel running as fast as we can that we don't see, hamster wheel to Ferris wheel is the metaphor I like to use. Get off the metaphor, and go Ferris wheel and look out and just see what's out there. You just never know. So thank you for that. Oh, I love that question. So the question was, when I jumped from technology to go work in the New York City Leadership Academy, why did I do it, or what was the decision criteria, and then once I got there, what did I learn? So that was the question. So first of all, remember, I had gone through some illness, right? I had an 8-pound tumor, for those of you who are really wanting to get into the medical piece. Horrible. That's in the book, by the way, so that's not a mystery. That's the story in the book. did not know if I had cancer, did not know if I was going to live or die, right? So I had some big epiphanies. That was in 2004. And Noel Tishy, who is a dear friend and mentor of mine since I worked at Hewlett-Packard, knew that I'd been sick. And he reached out and said, I know that you're really sick and you're needing to get well, because I was pretty sick. And would you like to come to New York and just come with me? You'll meet Mayor Bloomberg, you'll meet Chancellor Klein. Won't that be fun? And I'm thinking, no, not really. You know, I didn't have this, ooh, I get to meet Mayor Bloomberg. I mean, I wasn't all jazzed up about that, right? But I had a lot of faith and a lot of admiration for Noel Tishy. So I decided to go, just to try it out for a week. And I was just totally moved. I can share this now also in answer with, do you know instantly about these incidental meetings? When I went, I wasn't sure what I really was going to do. I ended up being a leadership consultant / facilitator for all of these incredible human beings who are totally doing God's work, teaching children in conditions that would just make your head spin in the Bronx and Brooklyn and all around New York. And I fell in love with the work. I fell in love with the passion. I fell in love with the contribution we were making to these children and to this educational system. And I will tell you, 5 years later, that whole loss of not being able to have my own children was replaced with, I know for a fact, that the reason why I was put there is I could then impact 1.5 million children. We're my own kids, but we're 1.5 million other kids. Still gets me emotional because that was divine providence. No question. How could I ever have thought that I would be doing work like that? And yet looking back on it and realizing that I couldn't have my own, but I was affecting so many others, that's not an accident. That's just not an accident. So, does that answer your question? I'm not married. I've never been married. She asked if I was married. I'm not married. I've never been married. Maybe I will be. I'm kind of open to that. I'm not close to it, right? 5E, yeah. Where is 5E when I need it, right? But you know, I have to tell you, you know, and I don't know, some of y'all may relate to this, but when you're raised in a family like I was, and my mom and daddy, and I know a couple of people know my parents, they were childhood sweethearts. They've been married for, 55 years, and in May, and they're just so happy, and I want that. And I'm just not ready to settle. I'm just not going to settle. And so it's okay. If I marry, fabulous. If I don't marry, okie dokie. There's another plan for me. I'm totally okay with it. I really am so zen. I wasn't so zen 30 years ago when everybody else was getting married and all the baby showers and wedding showers, and I was on a 747 to Nairobi or whatever. You know what I'm saying? A different life choice. And it's all about choices at the end of the day, right? Yeah, some of them are divorced. Everybody makes choices. I've made mine, and that's not an accident either. So, any other questions? Yes.
I just want to share that sometimes you take a step back, take a step forward.
Oh, yes.
So I was consultant at Emphasis when my father got sick. And I was running a huge project, and it was absolutely my Catholic partner. No question about it. I was on tap for partner. And the person who took over when I stepped back, they partnered that year. And it killed me. But because I stepped back, and I took care of my father for 1 year, it put me in a position to be a CIO.
Brilliant.
Best thing I've ever done.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's all about the zigzag, and in corporate America, and I so get that. There's actually a story in the book about a ski instructor that I was going on one of my first ski trips, and I was with all my Barbie doll friends who were black slope Barracuda people, and I was like the bunny slope girl, and there's actually a story about me having to walk back uphill because I had never, you need to read the story, but bottom line is it's all about backward ascents, and how oftentimes that's a gift too. because you just never know. I mean, you just never know who I could have met on the ski lift going back up there. I didn't, but I could have. Anyway. Any other questions? Yes. How are we doing on time, PJ? Yes. Oh, yes. Did you all hear that? The paradigm shift, it's not happening to you, it's actually a gift, and I totally, totally agree with that. There are just no accidents. It's all happening. My mother says it's all happening to prepare us for the next thing, whatever that is. It's all happening to prepare us for the next thing, whatever that next thing is, and I don't know what it is for each and every one of us, but there is a next thing. So.
One more question and then we've got to move on. Any more questions?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, how do you get to the answers that you were talking about? It's within you.
Yes, that's a wonderful talk, actually. The question was, how do you get to the answers that are within you? And that's actually the talk that I did to Dwayne last year, the 10 little steps to alignment. And it's things like, and you're going to think this sounds woo-woo, so just bear with me. But it's things like being quiet. It's things like turning off the radio in your car, right? Like not talking on the cell phone when you're driving. Just being quiet. The car can be like a little oasis, you know? Like nobody can get you, really. You know, if you turn off the phone. Things like walking in the sunshine or in the moonlight and listening to the birds and just letting nature, right? I'm big on body work. Reiki, Pilates, Tai Chi, yoga. That's the mind, body, spirit alignment. Writing in a journal. That's the whole putting your feelings out on paper because you relive them when that happens. The reason why I suggest people do that is you relive them. It's no longer just cerebral stuff. Do what? Or purge them, right, exactly. It can be very cathartic to write them down, right? Surrounding yourself with a really great support system. Reading everything, not just the books that you want to read. Read things that push you and pull you, and you kind of go, I don't know if I want to read that, but I'll give it a whirl because it lets you uncover things that you traditionally and conventionally wouldn't normally think. You know, when I was in corporate America, I read business books, for goodness sake, all the time. Goodness gracious, then you try to sell them and you get like 1.00 cents for them. I'll never forget taking them to the used bookstore. I had 3 huge garbage sacks full of business books. And I thought, oh, good, I'm going to get like a couple of $100. And they came out and he said, we'll give you 4. And I said, 400? He went, $4, you know, for like all these books. So read everything, not just the business books, right? Read stuff that pushes and pulls you, right? Things like that.
I do all of those things, and I still don't know whether the answer is this the true answer, or is this something that I'm fabricating of all the things that I'm reading? How do you know?
Yeah.
which one is-
So the question is, gosh, you know, I do all those things, but I don't know, is what I'm thinking and believing really, really the answer, or is it something that I think I'm supposed to be having? Let me tell you something. You know what you know when you know it. You know what you know when you know it. Just like when I woke up, you know, that morning, I'd been stressed about that job for 18 months, since the second week I'd been on that job. I'd been reading every business book, self-help book. I was on steroids, you know, I was lighting incense, woo-hoo, woo-hoo, you know, I was doing all of that, right? Give me the answer. And then one morning, out just clear as day,
I have a friend.
certain.
Sometimes you have to sew crooked before you can sew straight.
Love that. Did y'all hear that? Sometimes you have to sew crooked so you can sew straight.
When you're going around hymns, and maybe you've ever seen how things are made.
Yeah.
So it may be a detour, but it's the path to where you need to get to.
Yeah, you will know what you know when you know it. And I know that's just that doesn't help. I get it. I know. I know because, you know, my mom and dad would say, Kristin, it's going to be okay. I'm like, right. You know, but I promise, you will wake up one day and you will have clarity. You'll have clarity.
Maybe I'm just ready for that moment.
You're just ready. Yeah. Don't you wish you could push the easy button or the speed dial and it just doesn't happen that way? Dadgummit, you know. Yeah, I want the easy button for alignment. Alignment's a journey, by the way. It's not a destination. So it's not like we get there and we go, oh, I got it all figured out. I'm still doing it too. I'm launching a book. It's scary as all get out, right? Scary as all get out. You put your stuff out there and people read it and they go, it was interesting. You know, you're like, what does that really mean? You know what? But it doesn't matter. It is my contribution, right? It is what it is. Okay, thank y'all so much.